Dear Dr. Ambrish, it's very nice to meet you here in Mumbai. May I ask you a few questions?
Yes.
The next seminar we will have in Germany, Regensburg, in October 2019 will be about treatment of children. What is special in the treatment of children?
Hi everyone. First of all, greetings to you from Mumbai, and this is my personal clinic. To tell you about the seminar which we are going to have in October 2019, it's going to be a special one in the way because the approach in handling different diseases and syndrome in children really differs a lot. Because in an adult, the symptoms are elicited. An adult can give you a symptom, an adult can speak up his complaints, and then complaints could be converted into a rubric and we could enter a case and the case could be solved. But there are certain cases in children who are the syphilitic ones, or the psychosyphilitic ones, and where you do not have the actual words of the patient, but the observation of the patients and observation of the physician. So then how do we convert those behaviors and acts into rubrics? And this is prima facie at first stage, but then when we still go deeper and we go into handling of genetic mutational cases, then the history of the child, the history of the mother becomes very important. And then what is important is the symptoms which are coming and then converting them into a rubric which becomes important, or the thought process of the mother at that particular time which becomes important. So we will try to study gradation of symptoms, gradation of rubrics, because we will come across different cases where we will have maze of symptoms, and these symptoms, when you pick up one symptom, you will get a remedy. The remedy works, but the remedy works partial, but we do not get a complete cure and complete reversal. So I will try to share with you few of my cases, especially pediatric cases where we did not have much history to elicit, but whatever data we had and whatever information we got from the parents, we were able to elicit the right connection between the child's pathology and the history, convert that into a rubric and find out the right simillimum. So it could be a general rubric, it could be a particular rubric, it could be a deeper miasmatic syphilitic rubric, or it could also be a delirium or a delusion. Because there are so many acts where the child goes into a delirium, the child goes into a delusion, the child goes into a confusion, the child goes into a thought process. So how do you really elicit it, and how do you really differentiate? So this is what I am going to share. I'm sure it will help you all also in your practice. You must be dealing with a lot of cases with children, and this will probably help you in solving those cases.
Which kind of diseases of children are you treating in your clinic? Are there any key aspects?
Yes, there are lot many cases of children which we are handling, but if we analyze in terms broadly, we have two types of cases. One is physiological and another is pathological. So now I am handling, in the initial part of my career, I was handling the physiological cases. That means the child is born, and after getting born, there is immediate physiology which takes place. So the child goes into a kind of acute jaundice or a physiological jaundice which does not recover. The child goes into an epilepsy. The child goes into an hypoxic injury, so giving rise to acute pseudosyphilitic manifestation. So how do you handle it? But now are the cases which are coming to us are more after the entire pathology has developed. The parents came to know quite late about the diagnosis. So it could be mental retardation, it could be autism, it could be cerebral palsy, it could be even leukomalacia, it could be dystrophy, leukodystrophy, and many grave pathologies which come across. So what happens is we really do not we get confused in understanding the symptoms at that particular time, because the parent himself do not understand that my child is delayed, my child is not up to the mark, the child is not catching a milestone. So the entire journey really starts from there. And then what happens is we take the general symptoms of the child, because what we do is we only try to treat the constitution, we try to only handle the constitution without really understanding why the child has developed this. So we forget what has to be cured in the disease, and then straight away jump for finding the simillimum. So if we do not have connection between what has to be cured in the disease and finding the right constitutional simillimum, we will not have complete cures. So diseases, these are the pathological diseases in child, but there are so many behavioral problems which come, psychological problems, childhood depressions, childhood manias, so the child goes into defiant disorders. So these are various type of chronic psychiatric illnesses the child goes into because of certain trauma or the sora being compromised in the childhood. So how do you handle that? How do you see the real how the disease really bloom into bigger and deeper disease, and they could land up into further deeper psychological problems or even pathological disease, and that could be destructive pathological disease. So it's a child of schizophrenia landing into leukemia, a child of depression landing into juvenile diabetes. So there's a lot of connection where the child lands up into, and these are we call them as the psychosyphilitic cases. How we can do it, how we also failed initially, where we did not go into a deeper aspect of the case, understood the right development pattern of the disease, correlating it to the miasm, correlating it to the rubrics, mental or physical, entering into the simillimum, and then solving the whole case. So it's going to be an interesting journey. It's going to be an interesting learning, because we'll try to give you as number of cases and try to learn from the cases. Yes, and those very peculiar rare materia medicas of the children, and the rare drugs, or not so, I would not say rare, but not so commonly used drugs, how we were able to enter into those cases and solve those cases.
How and when do you consider the pregnancy of the mother? Respecting which diseases?
Yes. So the pregnancy of the mother becomes very important when there is a genetic mutational case which is coming in front of you. Until the age where the child is of 18 to 19 years or 20 years, the history of the mother does matter. As we say that the ailment from doesn't really matter when the disease have full bloom, but what state of the disease or what state of the pathology the child has been brought to us, irrespective of the age what it is and irrespective of the disease gravity. If the state of the pathology is more pathophysiological, then the initial the initial 4 months are not to be taken into consideration. The later 6 months or 5 months are to be taken into consideration. But if there is a deformity which is formed in the child, there is a kind of a deviation, the anatomy, or there is a deficiency in the pathology or distortion in the pathology, then the first 4 months of the pregnancy are to be given importance, because first 4 months of the pregnancy the structure develops, and then next 5 months of the pregnancy the physiology or the growth process of the body starts. So it becomes very important for us to first to identify what is the disease, then what has to be cured in the disease, what is the process, and then understand the pathology. And once we understand the pathology, whether the pregnancy history becomes important or not. Where if it is a physiological process, yes, definitely very important. But if it is a chronic pathology which is developed over the number of years, then so during physiology it is acute exciting cause of that mother, in the ailment from or the emotional pattern has to be taken. But when it is a chronic pathology which has developed and has reflected in the child for a number of years, for example, if the child is born with the child goes into excessive number of fractures, excessive number of bone breaking or brittleness. So why the brittleness has come? The child is so small. The child has not even come into this world, but there is recurrent fracture, so the cause has to be addressed in the mother's womb. And it's not only ailment can take care of this. Ailment is only a physiology. The thought process or the neurotransmitters which are secreting is only would trigger an inflammatory reaction. But why a destruction has happened? So if the destruction has happened, then that means the thought process of the mother has to be considered, the perception of the mother has to be considered, the delusion of the mother has to be considered, the thoughts of the mother has to be considered, and then we can treat these chronic and deeper pathologies.
Is there a difference in the sense between psoric symptoms of a child and psoric symptoms of an adult?
There is no gross difference between the two. They are one and the same, but the expression and the manifestation will always differ, because the child is always in a soric state, and adult is always in a psychotic state. So the manifestation, the intensity, the frequency, the duration, the expression will all depend on what is the genetic makeup of that constitution. But yes, it is more pronounced, it is more proactive, and it is more visible in children, and hence to find out the psoric symptoms and see the psoric symptoms in smaller children are much easier than to find out in adults. So the sora in a child basically becomes important for us to understand the constitution, but the sora in the man, the soric or the sensitivity in the man gives us understanding of the sensitivity of the constitution. So because as the child grows into a teenager or into an adult, into a middle age, higher age, you see the sora remains, but the sora gets hidden, and the sora sometimes is not seen because the psychosis is so huge among that individual that sora will never be seen. So this is and the physician has to have the tact that how to elicit sora, how to find out the sensitivity in an adult, because if you scold a child, the child weeps, the child cries, the child is affected to rudeness, affected to sensitivity, affected to reprimands. But the same thing which you do to a grown-up adult who is into psychotic state, in a syphilitic state, the sora does not react in the same manner what the child will react. So it becomes, the stimulus is the same for an adult and the child, but the reaction is more pronounced. If the reaction is not pronounced, the sora is hidden, the sora is more evident. So how to study that, how to differentiate that, how to understand that, and how will it help you to help in your cases, we will try to share with you.
What is your experience regarding traumata during pregnancy?
Sorry?
What is your experience regarding traumata? Trauma during pregnancy?
Absolutely. Trauma could be mental as well as physical, and it is 90% of the time, or even 95% of the time, it is the trauma during pregnancy which induces the primary reaction to the process of the disease, which would be taking birth in the child. So trauma is basically the main triggering factor. So trauma could be emotional trauma, could be more physical. Trauma could be because of excessive use of modern medicines. It could be because of vaccinations. So it could be of various types. But what effect does the trauma have? So because we have soil, season, and seed. So if the season, that means what we say is the environment is such, the environment has become in such a manner that the mother is scared of the father, the mother is scared of the in-laws, the parents, the family, and is always in a scared pattern. Then the environment is conducive for her. The soil, that means the mother is sensitive, the soil is weak, the soil can absorb the trauma, absorb the fear, and a seed which will be born will take an imprint of this soil. So all three things become important, and hence each and every trauma, which could be mental, physical, emotional, we will try to share with you how to hunt for this trauma, because many a times the language which the patient uses is very general and vague. Yes, I got angry. Yes, I got grief. I was unhappy. But that's a very vague answer, and we really cannot convert that into a repertoire language. So how to step by step elicit and how to step by step grade the symptoms, and from the symptoms or from the situation we'll try to find out the rubrics which could have made a trauma in the mother and giving rise to a particular pathology in the child. So trauma is very important. How to hunt, how to search, what type of traumas, and how do we correlate with the rubrics we will try to share with you.
My last questions. Do you have any experience if parents or grandparents of the patient have had severe traumata?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Very, very important, because there are certain very few genetic disorders which they have. They could be X-linked or the Y-linked. You know, it could be X-linked. Y-linked means coming from the maternal side or the paternal side. So whatever is the dominant gene, you know, the dominant gene, the expression of the pathology will be according to it. So let's say a particular trait, you know, like bones becoming flattened, you know, the bones become melting from here, melting from one side, the vertex melting from one side. So this is a very rare and peculiar conditions which happen, and if this is happening means, and if the child is small, that means the trauma has come from the mother's womb. And if the mother also has a similar trait, then it has come from her mother's womb. That means the child's grandmother has suffered. Or if even she had it, then probably we still go higher and find out. So this is the thought process which get linked to the genetic inheritance, and they transfer it to the child, and which goes into the lineage. So it becomes important not in terms of finding the medicine, but to understand where the disease actually came from. So that once we give the right simillimum, the child who grows up does not pass on to his progeny the same X-linked disease. And this is why the trauma in father or grandfather becomes very important.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Okay, thank you very much. See you soon in 2019 October. Thank you very much. Bye.